Hello everyone, welcome to Mentor Chat. I am Atharva.
And I am Vivaswan.
So along with
Hi
you, we
guys.
will be the mentees seeking advice from mentors and sharing the knowledge with you. So for the first episode of Mentor Chat, we have with us someone who has been our mentor and guided us for about a year and a half.
Let me just tell you his introduction. It's going to take some time. He is the founder and CEO of White Collar Legal LLP. It is a firm that specializes in the field of IPR and corporate law. He has also been a visiting faculty at MIT ADT, SCM HRD, multiple IIMs, Tata Institute of Social Sciences, and currently he is also a faculty at Flame Institute. He has also been a TEDx and Joe Stock speaker and a youth ambassador with the Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports. He has been into angel investing since 2015, and his biggest year came in the year of 2017 when he, along with his firm, raised more than $15 million for startups through equity and debt. Now, outside of work, he is a published author and he has had various leadership roles in Toastmasters. So, thank you, Kunal, for being here. We are really glad to have you.
Most welcome. Thank you for
Now,
having me.
as you know, we have been planning this meeting since quite a long time. And fortunately or unfortunately, due to lockup, we need to have this online. Now, I know you for a while now, and I know that you're a family oriented person. So, how have you been spending your time with your family during this lockdown on a personal level, that is?
So the initial time was very good. I mean, I was having fun and work was slowly transitioning to the digital front. So things were nice. But after I think a week or two, boredom started setting in because I caught up on all the movies, I caught up on all the books, and caught up with all my old friends. But you know what to do, and I missed. So a lot of the work I do is outside, be it representing at the court or speaking at multiple places. So I missed all of that. I'm still missing all of that. But family time wise, we have gone back to playing carom and cards, and you know that competitive streak has come in. So
Right.
I do feel like it is a summer vacation all over again.
Right. That's great. Like all of us have been feeling the same too. Like we have so much time on our
Yeah.
hands that we can start with our new activities that we had pending for quite a long time, like this one.
Yeah.
So I think let's begin with the formal questions, I would say. So we
Yeah.
know that you started working at a very young age, and now you are at a revered position in most of the things that you are doing. So, so for the listeners who are probably listening to you for the first time, can you in brief tell your story for this period? Like since you started working, how has the journey been?
Yeah. So, okay, my journey has not been all, what do you say, strategic or something that I had prepared and planned for. It just happened. So the first thing I started doing was, taking coaching classes. So whatever I used to be decent in academics, and I used to teach well even that time as a student. So I used to do this coaching business, and it really took off to a certain level where people asked me to, make a company out of it and all that. And because I got a bad treatment from a lot of professionals, I decided to become one myself to support a lot of students who, like me, want to start something. And at the age of 21, I cleared the required courses that were required and started practicing. And from 21 to today, the journey has, just grown. And when you start something of your own, when you're first generation, you need to build a client, you need to build name for yourself, and you need to build so many other things, systems, processes. So building that, I really don't remember anything from 21 to 25 because it was a very stressful and it was a very hardcore productivity time. So it just went on autopilot somehow. Now, when I reflect back, I feel those were one of the best years because struggle is something that I miss doing now when everything is set. But yeah, because I was first generation into the business, I had to do a lot of articles writing, I had to do a lot of speaking, I had to write books so that my name is known in the market. So I think all that which I did because of, I had to do, became a part of me as a habit, and I still do it now when it is not really needed, but I love doing it. So that's the journey more or less. And I was very lucky through God's grace. Everything worked out. We are a team of around 30 people today. I been invited to speak at forums, alongside people who I really revere and are veterans in the field. So for me, this respect and name in the profession counts more than any other materialistic, metric for success. So it's been a good journey, and I don't count myself as successful because it's not even been 10 years. So it's all experiment going on. Till now, the experiment is going right.
Right. So, like since our channel's name is Mentor Chat, success for us will be always relative.
Hmm.
So when we look at you, we definitely say that you are successful right now. So, Atharva, I think you have some
So,
questions for the IPR.
so for people who are completely unaware about IPRs, so can you walk us through what is an IP and what are its benefits and advantages?
Right. So I'll just give you a small background before I answer the question. I was never intending to come into intellectual property law. I was hardcore into corporate law, and yeah, somewhat revered into criminal law also, corporate criminal law. IP happened when a client who was very young who walked into my office, and she was an author, a 13-year-old author, and she asked me to do a copyright renewal agreement for her. A copyright is a right to adapt or reproduce or distribute your books. And I was surprised that the income she made from the book for last year in 2015 when she came to me was 29 lakh rupees, and the girl was 13-year-old. And that is when I realized the potential of how IP can be powerful, of how people can create passive incomes. And yeah, so there are multiple, I mean, answering a question now, there are multiple IPs that you can create. IPs are nothing but intellectual property that you can't touch and feel, but I have all the features of a property like any other tangible, and you can, yeah, buy, sell, rent, assign it, pass it under a will. There are various types of IP, around more than 20, but the most commonly used IPs are patent, trademark, copyright, designs, in that range.
So what is the difference between a patent and a copyright?
So I'll give you the difference between the four of them. A patent is in India usually for just two things. If you are, creating some new product or a new process, you get a process or a product patent. Whereas in the Europe and in America, you can create different types of patent. You can do a utility patent and so on. So patents are for processes or for products. So McDonald's burger would be a product patent, and the way the burger is made will be a process patent. A copyright, on the other hand, is for things like books, music, paintings, something that it's a right to copy. So it's very easy to understand. A trademark is for something that distinguishes your business or your creation from somebody else's. So it can be a logo, it can be a name, tagline, jingle, whatever. And a design, which is the fourth most common, is a aesthetic feature that differentiates you from your competition. So you can say the Ford Mustang grill different from the Dodge grill. So all these are different. There are geographical indications also, but yeah, I mean, I can talk about it for a couple of days.
So
So,
let's say if I have an idea and I decide to patent it. So how much do I have to show in terms of a model or suppose presentation to apply for the patent, and what is the process like? Like how much is the patent validity? How much does it cost? So can you walk us through the process of patenting?
Yes, that's a good question. So now I have this year become a fellow member at the Institute of Company Secretaries, and I have applied for a PhD. And my PhD thesis is exactly this: that how many patents are filed, how many are granted, and how many are actually reaching the market. They are monetized. So filing patent works on two levels. There is a provisional level and there is a final level. At the provisional level, you just need your idea on paper, but of course, it has to be technically explained how it will work. But at the final level, you need a prototype or a sample. So that's how there are two stages of patenting. It's a completely online process, and it's a techno-legal document. So you need to technically describe the product and legally also cover the product in such a way that somebody else does not find a loophole and then make a separate product out of it.
So how much is the validity of a patent in India, let's say?
20 years.
20 years.
So I'll just interrupt in between. So since Kunal, you have like this was a question for a later time, but since the topic has come right now, you are mentoring me for the Impromptu Premier League, which is a intangible concept basically, which we have got from some different idea. So does this qualify for, say, the name would be trademarked or the concept of the competition would be copyright? How does that classify into this, or is it a very common thing that cannot be say protected by IPR?
No, so that's a good point you brought. A single thing can have multiple intellectual property registrations. For example, a car nearly has about 400 patents. A phone has more than 100 because, and everything works in combination. So the Impromptu Premier League you've created, you rightly said, the name itself can be subject to a trademark. The format of the Impromptu Premier League, the document that you've created, the master dossier, that can be a complete program. Just like Anthony Robbins has a program called Awaken the Giant Within, where he takes the participants for a 2-month retreat. This can be a couple of stage-wise format that is registered by you, and people like Hardik who want to use it in Bombay can license it from you and use it. And so the thing about novelty is there are different categories. So I'll give you an example. We have all used Book My Show as an app, and it
Right.
is used in the movie industry. But you can use Book My Parking and still register it as an IP, because parking and theater are very distinct classes under intellectual property.
Right.
So I always tell clients that even though you find certain industry doing very well, especially the tech industry, you can just use this business model and apply it somewhere else.
So
Right. Right.
Kunal,
It's like
so you
it is
mentioned the
like
process.
distillery. Yeah, it's like distillery water is there. You can start a company called Distillery Shoes. Nobody can stop you.
Okay.
So you mentioned the process. So now what is your and your organization's role in this process of registering patents and copyrights?
Yeah, so we are, end-to-end consultants when it comes to patenting. But to tell you a little bit about my firm, I started with me and Ankita Chopra. Both of us started, and then we grew, and 3 partners now. Everybody has their own staff. And our major basic service that we provided was we incorporated companies, then send them, did their auditing and accounting, and like that, the very basic service we handled up to 250 to 300 clients. And honestly, I got bored after that because the money was good, and it was not very challenging, honestly. Then when I met clients like the person I spoke about, I got into intellectual property. So my IP team is now bringing 80% of the firm's revenue, even though we do volume wise very less IP work. So IP is low volume, high value work, which I really like. So what we do in patenting, trademark, or all this intellectual property is we conduct a search for you to see whether it is a novel thing. We file the application, we deal with prosecutions, reply to legal notices, and ensure you get the registration to your name. And one additional service that we provide, because I've been learning this from European and American firms, is we help you monetize the intellectual property. So suppose you have a patent, we will help you connect to the right investor or to the right person who can help you take this to the market. Because otherwise a patent is just a paper, it's a CV item. So we don't want you to stop there. So there are almost 4 people in my office right now whose only job is to go through these journals, trademark, patent, and copyright journals. And whenever they find something similar to our client's registration, we send them a notice. And
Right.
I'm very happy to say that we were the first one to start this in India. And then a lot of other law firms have started providing this service.
Can you share with us one example of an interesting patent you have filed that you find really interesting?
So we filed a patent. So this was developed So one thing I've realized from all my inventor clients is best inventions come out of personal frustration. So one of my clients who's a pharma genius, he developed a drug which gives effect 3 times a day. So his mother used to forget. A mother was a patient of Alzheimer's, and her memory started degrading. So she didn't take her medicines on time. So my client developed a drug which you take in the morning once, and it gives you effect 3 times. Once after lunch and the other time after dinner. So it avoids you taking the medicine repeatedly. I have another client who has created meat, like meat,
Yeah,
artificial meat out of vegetable waste.
right,
So it's all very interesting because in my case they have to take me to the factory, disclose all the formula to me, and it's exciting to see something and register something that you guys will probably experience 5 years later.
right. So you spoke a bit about your employees. So slightly coming to that aspect of your life. So these days the competition is really increasing. I mean, I have seen a few people approaching you for internships and all. So I have noticed that in some case it happens that the student graduates or just is out of 12th standard and wants to start working. And in this rush, they either take up the first opportunity that comes to them, or they keep on waiting for the most ideal opportunity that they want. Now, practically, it is not possible to get exactly what you want. You might have to make some compromises. But on the other hand, it is not justified to select whatever comes up just on the first instance. So, how do you suggest one should maintain a balance? Because at that age, it is challenging for them.
So I think I'll tell you my approach. I feel at a certain stage of life, you should realize that you're an idealist and not a realist. That happens in the earlier 20s. And I had, I would say, to a great extent, very good mentors in my life. Be it Mr. Uday Gujar, who gave me my first set of clients, or my family who keeps guiding me very positively. So in my case, I just said yes to whatever opportunity came, and it just led to better opportunities. So one thing I would advise not doing is waiting for the best opportunity or the perfect internship. That does not happen. And I've done internships with lawyers, who are absolutely struggling, and I've done internship with top tier law firms, and I've learned equally from both. So that's my advice. That don't sit doing nothing. Work somewhere.
Right. And when it comes to employees, I'm going to ask you a very cliche question, but when you are hiring someone, do you look at pure legal genius or do you look at soft skills or whether they have a good will to learn? Maybe they are not as strong right now, but maybe if they just have the fire to learn, are you still backing them or how does it go for you?
I think that's a good question. I think three things is something I look at. First is technical competence. They have to understand what is going on in the office. I mean, that's the absolute prerequisite. The second thing, what I look in is how badly does this person want the job? Is he the sole breadwinner? Is it from a tier three city? Is the hunger to improve very high? Because I have a small firm and I have a lot of work. So I cannot afford to have people who are packing their bags at 5 o'clock. I want people who have no life outside office. When I say that, I'm saying that in a good way that the hunger to learn and improve is very high. So I always tell them that you have to spend 3 years at my firm. I do a bond with them. And I said, after 3 years, I can place you at the best firm, or you can go back to your city and start your practice. I'll make you that good. So that hunger, like you said, is a very important prerequisite to me. And third is, I have these mic testing experiences where I test the character of people. So I will just keep money lying here and there, or I will keep an important document lying here and there purposely to see what the person does. If the money disappears or if the document is not kept properly, mentally I make a note that this guy will leave us in the next quarter.
So for those who are probably looking to work with Kunal down the line, please keep it in mind. If you find money lying around, don't pick it up. If you find an important document, definitely pick it up.
Yeah. So the point I was trying to make in the third point is, I see people who are proactive in the sense of who have a internal initiative taking up ability to know what is the right thing to do without waiting for instructions. I like those
Right.
kind of people.
So basically, look at substance over form even in the real life, not just in the legal understanding.
Yes, yes.
Right.
So the
So
next set of questions are for business owners and entrepreneurs. So I have heard you mentioned in a session. I have heard you mention in a session about establishing processes, robust processes, and risk management strategies, and especially this time where there is the Corona crisis. Uh, so, what are your thoughts about this, and how have you implemented such processes in your firm?
Yes, Atharva, that's a. I mean, the next video I'm going to make on my personal video series, I'm going to talk about this in length. But there is a book that I recommend almost everybody, and wherever I speak, the book is called Good to Great. It's by Jim Collins. He speaks about this exactly, that companies that last 100 years or more are process-driven companies, not people-driven companies, and therefore that really hit hard with me. And in my firm also, none of us, even me, we are all replaceable. And we are replaceable to such an extent that tomorrow, if I don't decide to go or any employee quits, the SOPs for his work, it's all defined. So I can literally have zero economic loss and replace even myself. So processes are nothing but creating certain, step by step things to right from creating a document to answering calls to taking leads and converting them into the process. So for creating very good robust systems for your company or for your business or for your profession, whatever it is, you need to understand how many transactions you guys do and how many steps are there in each transaction. How many of these are repeat transactions and how many of these are what if transactions. If this happens, this will happen. So you have to spend that time. It took me almost 2 years to define all the transactions and everything. So today it's a trade secret at my firm as to how I manage it. But my firm is entirely process driven now.
So yeah. So since you told us about your success stories, I'm sure that at some point of time you will also have tried something and probably not been successful at it. So again, you might say a cliched question, but everyone has something to learn from the times that they probably could not succeed at what they tried. So is there any one such point in your life that you carry with you which taught you something important?
Yeah, so I mean, the downside of settling early and experiences success early is I sort of took it for granted and I created this silo against, started living in a certain bubble that the world cannot run without me, my clients cannot function without me. And there were instances where, because of this attitude, I lost very good accounts. I lost a few very good relationships because that arrogance had come in. This is when I was, I think, 23, 24, that age. And I used to make good money. So that's a very bad combination, young age and money. So now I've learn sort of, so like you need to have a board which constantly criticizes you, and you don't, all yes men don't work. I don't work in silos anymore, and yeah, it's an open field of communication. So I think that was the main thing we were on that. I think it went to my head a little bit. And of course, when I wrote my book also, The Intern CEO, it really didn't kick off as much as I thought it would. And therefore that was a second learning for me, that not everything you do will hit the sky immediately.
Right.
So Kunal, what type of clients do you have right now? Are they repeat clients, or is it like a one-time contract for registering a patent? And either ways, how do you maintain customer relationships?
Yeah, it's a tricky question for me to answer because it reveals a lot of sensitive data. So we have four types of clients. One is clients who are high number, low value, around 400 of them, 384 of them, who pay us yearly for the compliance, the routine compliances, accounting, GST compliance, those things. The second type of clients are the clients who don't have a internal CS law CA and outsource that kind of work to us. So we bill them monthly. So they are better than the yearly paying clients. The third
Right.
type of clients are clients who are assignment based. Assignment based, they come and go based on their need. And the fourth type of client, I think these are the I love them the most, are clients where we have 25 of such clients who are our crown jewels. The clients like Thyrocare, clients like Natural Ice Creams, where I'm not really involved as a lawyer or a legal professional, where I'm actually a part of their family, be it work, family, or personal life, and I'm a member of their core team in advisory, director, that capacity. So this is how it works. And of course, I don't want to increase the 25 number, but this number keeps increasing. The last two, the volume clients and the monthly billing, I keep adding around 10 every month. And yes, how do you build customer relationships? So I think three things here. The first is customers really care about delivery and nothing else is what I've realized. So you need to, if you start slacking in any professional service, people will just move on. No matter how good you are, people don't like slackers. The second thing in customer relationships is you need to sort of remember their important events, and when it is their urgent items, and accordingly prioritize your team to deliver to them, because every client has urgency at different points. So you can't be in a service firm where you are reaction based, that every mail you are replying with the same kind of intensity. It does not work like that. So you need to be very strategic in terms of allocating work and delivering work, and clients really appreciate this. And the third thing in client relationships is a lot of clients go through up and downs, and we also, of course, go through that. Only when you have a personal rapport at that point, where you have built a rapport outside office and outside work, will the client, stay with you, even if you screw up a few times. And that is why I've always seen doctors and lawyers, especially, are not changed generations after generations unless you are really, really bad. So
Right. So you spoke about retaining the clients. Now I'll ask about getting the clients in the first place. I remember once I was there at your firm before delivering an address of myself. So at that point of time, during the discussion, you told me to wait for 1 minute because you had to make a post on social media. So how intensely do you track your social media, and how big a part has it played in developing your business?
it's I think it's played a massive part. So a lot of my peers in the profession keep telling me that I've built a brand around myself, and it is as if I'm practicing for 15 years, whereas I'm a graduate from ILS in the year 2016. That's 4 years back. So that's very, very recent. I mean, it's funny almost. So it has played a big part. And I was not very strategic with my social media. I just posted what I did as a matter of fact, because advertising is not allowed in our field. So you can't make a sales pitch per se. So I just posted what I did, and one thing led to another speaking engagement, that led to another. And I think market works on what they see is what they like, and a person who has a lot of visibility will often make more business, is what I believe. So now again, like I said, initially I did it because I wanted more clients, and now it has just become a part of who I am. So
Right.
even I mean, now the kind of thoughts I get are all in a client service mentality thoughts. I can't think of enjoyment per se.
Right.
So I think so it's very, very critical building a very good social media presence, because nowadays the first thing people do is Google you and watch the one or two videos that show up and read one or two articles that show up. and two of my biggest clients, Vivaswan, have come through like zero advertising and just through my Google search.
Okay, great.
I mean, clients who are paying in the range of couple of lakhs have come only from social media.
So Kunal, entrepreneurs are generally stuck up with this term of scaling up. So
Yeah.
as you have offices now across cities in India, so what advice would you like to give to the entrepreneurs on this term of scaling up?
I think you should not scale up until you have customers asking you desperately that please come and serve me here. So I really wanted to be, if you see the best of the consulting firms, uh, their main guys sit at certain place and the support team sits everywhere. And in my case, I wanted the similar type that I don't want to move from Pune or maybe just move to Bombay, not more than that. But I scaled up purely because people used to constantly beg that please have an office at Bombay, please have, and I started one. Then a lot of our cases started going to the Supreme Court, Delhi High Court, a lot of patent IP issues, and clients started begging that can you please have a Delhi office? It's very difficult to come down to Bombay or Pune every time, and that is why I have a Delhi office. Now, some of our clients who are in Bangalore are desperately asking me that, Kunal, can you please set up somebody? So that's how I have scaled up. There's no strategy, or I didn't start my firm that, I will sort of expand to all these cities. It is just the need of the hour. And I'm very happy to share. One of my clients is Maheshwari Foods, the person who runs the Maharaja Bhog restaurant chain. You must have maybe eaten once or twice. So Maharaja Bhog did very well in Dubai, and we will, and of course, the person has different businesses in Dubai. So now we will start our Dubai branch very soon in the next 6 months. Again, because our client demanded it.
So basically your scaling is demand driven and not to find new businesses across the country.
No. So my logic is very simple, Atharva. My rent of the office and my staff salary are paid by the client. So if the client stops paying, I will shut that branch. I am absolutely having zero ego while running the business. I don't want to say I have 100 employees and I have 100 offices. I absolutely don't believe in that kind of formula. That is why the corona hit absolutely does not affect me, because I've told my employees that all your salaries are linked to so and so clients. If we lose those clients, you lose your job. It's as simple as that. And therefore, employees also go the extra mile in maintaining the clients.
That's great.
Right.